March 23rd, 1945, 02:17 a.m. The banks of the Rhine River, near the shattered German town of Wesel, tremble under a sky stitched with artillery fire. Smoke drifts low like a choking fog, mixing with the metallic tang of river water and cordite. The night is black, except for the flashes. And in the middle of that trembling darkness, a handful of American combat engineers, the tired, mud-streaked men of the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion, press flat against the frozen ground as another German shell whistles overhead. It hits the river behind them. A column of water erupts like a dragon's roar. Cold mist rains down over helmets and maps. Someone curses under his breath. Someone else laughs. A tired, wild laugh, the kind men make when they've been awake for 40 hours and know they will not be sleeping any time soon. You can almost feel it. The river, wide and black and merciless. And on the far side, hidden by smoke, the enemy waiting. But these men are not infantry. They are builders, soldiers with wrenches, cables, scales, and steel. And yet tonight, they must do something that sane men would call impossible. Build a bridge across the Rhine, under direct fire, in under 48 hours. Because if they fail, the Allied advance stalls. If they fail, thousands of infantrymen will be stranded on this side of the river, unable to push deeper into Germany. If they fail, the war drags on, and every hour means more dead. Captain Carl F. Timmerman, the man tasked with leading the first wave across once the bridge is built, crouches beside them. He listens to the shells, counting seconds between the blasts, an instinct men develop when their lives depend on it. Another explosion thunders closer. The ground jumps. Dust rains from torn tree trunks. Someone mutters, "Sir, they know we're here." Of course they know. The Germans can hear the engine convoys moving up. They can see the silhouettes of pontoon sections covered with tarps. They can sense the moment the Americans make their final push across the last natural barrier inside the Reich, the Rhine, Germany's ancient shield. But the engineers cannot wait for quieter skies. They cannot wait for daybreak. They cannot wait at all.
Every minute lost is a battalion trapped. Every hour lost is a division exposed. Every delay risks the worst, destruction of the entire crossing plan. Captain Robert Bob Risner, one of the senior engineers on site, taps the face of his wristwatch with a gloved finger. The luminous dials shake with the vibration of another artillery burst. He exhales once, a long breath. It's time. No one argues. No one hesitates. Orders slide down the line in hoarse whispers. A whistle blows, sharp, quick. Men rise from the ground like shadows lifting from the earth, and then the builders of the 291st move. Not in the open yet, not toward the river. First, they run to the stacks of prefabricated pontoon sections, the only hope of creating a floating bridge strong enough to carry tanks across. And even now, under fire, they work with the same quiet choreography they learned in training. Hands on clamps, boots on braces, ropes thrown, bolts hammered, pins locked. Every clang of metal sounds too loud. Every silhouette feels exposed. Machine gun bullets start flicking across the water. The Germans have realized what's happening. The Americans are about to build a way across, a way for armor, a way for victory. A searchlight sweeps the river, then the bank, slicing the night open. Someone shouts, "Down!" The engineers drop instantly. The world becomes noise, crashing, cracking noise, and the white glare of the searchlight burns through smoke. You can almost feel your heartbeat punching against your ribs. You can almost taste the fear in the air. But the searchlight flicks away, moving to follow a distant barrage. And in that moment, the engineers rise again. They return to the pontoon pieces, no questions asked. The work restarts. No one complains. No one looks back. Because they know the truth. If they don't finish this bridge, infantry will die on the shore. If they don't finish this bridge, tanks will sit idle. If they don't finish this bridge, the war will not end. And beside them, on the command line, Colonel David E. Peregrine, commander of the 291st, surveys the chaos. He is calm, too calm for a man being bombed. But he's seen worse. He knows the enemy tactic. Keep shelling the river to break their nerve, break their timing, break their spirit. It won't work. Not tonight. Peregrine leans into his radio and gives the order that seals their fate, and maybe the enemy's too. Phase 1, begin the crossing. And just like that, the first pontoon sections roll toward the river, pulled by sweating men who should have been sleeping hours ago. The planks creak. The wheels thump. The water ahead reflects fire-like light from burning ruins. But they move anyway. One step at a time, toward the black, icy water, toward the German guns waiting on the opposite bank, toward history. Because in the next 48 hours, these engineers will attempt something the Allied High Command privately doubts is possible. Something that even the Germans, who invented modern military bridging, believe cannot be done under this level of fire. But the 291st isn't listening to the doubts. They only hear the river, the shells, and their own pounding hearts. And as the first pontoon slams into the cold water, a single question hangs over them, unspoken but brutally real. The moment the first pontoon hits the Rhine, the river seems to inhale, its surface swelling, rippling, tugging at the steel like a beast testing its prey. The current is icy, vicious, faster than it looks in the dark. It pulls at the ropes immediately, demanding payment for every second these men dare trespass on its surface. Sergeant Joe Pinder, a wiry engineer with hands permanently blackened by grease and gunpowder, braces his boots against the mud as he shouts, "Hold it steady, 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 steady!" The men strain in silence, every muscle, every tendon, every ounce of strength they have left. Their breath turns to fog in the cold, the ropes cut into palms even through gloves, and above them artillery continues to fall, sometimes close, sometimes distant, always too frequent. A flash, a crack, a shockwave of heat rolls across the riverbank. One of the men flinches, but Pinder growls, "Eyes on the pontoon. Let the shells do what they're gonna do. We finish the job." There is something mesmerizing about the way engineers work under fire. Infantry can hit the dirt. Armor can retreat behind a ridge. But these men, they must stand. Open, exposed, audible, visible, predictable. The Germans know exactly where the engineers will be, and they know exactly what the Americans are trying to do, which makes this next step the most dangerous moment of the whole operation, linking the first two pontoons. Staff Sergeant Earl McMichael splashes knee-deep into the freezing water, clutching a steel connector pin the size of a hammer. The current nearly knocks him sideways as he reaches the pontoon from below. He needs both hands to align the fittings, and he can't do that while holding a flashlight. So he works blind, by touch, by memory, by instinct. You can almost feel the cold numbing his fingers, the water clawing at his legs, the mud pulling at his boots. "Higher!" he shouts. The men hauling the second pontoon lifted, inch by inch. "Hold it! Don't move!"
A distant German machine gun rake sweeps the waterline, sending sparks off metal and splinters from old pylons. But McMichael doesn't flinch, doesn't look, doesn't even pause. He drives the pin home with a heavy clang. One down, dozens more to go. Then, through the smoke on the far bank, something changes. At first, it's nothing more than a muffled pop, then another, then a streak of orange arcs overhead. Captain Timmerman's voice breaks the night. "Flares! Move!" The German illumination rounds burst above the river, showering blinding white light over the entire crossing site. Shadows sharpen instantly. The engineers freeze like suddenly cornered animals. For the first time all night, the enemy can clearly see them. And the response comes fast. A new wave of artillery shrieks across the water. Not random, not searching, targeted. The rounds detonate in a vicious sequence. Boom, boom, boom. Walking closer, closer, closer. Colonel Pergrin grips his binoculars so tightly his knuckles go pale. "This is a bracket," he mutters. "They've zeroed us." That means the next shells will land directly on the engineers. He raises his hand to yell a retreat order, but the men are already moving. Not backward, forward. Because running won't save the bridge. And if the bridge dies, the mission dies. "Get the next section out!" someone bellows. Just like that, dozens of men surge toward the second pontoon assemblies. You can see their silhouettes hauling ropes, slamming pins, sliding planks, every movement frantic but skilled. They're racing the artillery, racing death, racing time itself. A shell lands 20 yards short. The shock wave drops 2 men flat. Mud showers across the bank. One screams, shrapnel in his leg, but he waves the medic away and crawls forward to keep working. Another explosion detonates near the waterline, sending a geyser of river water over the first span. The engineers duck, sputter, wipe their eyes, and keep connecting clamps. It's madness. It's unbelievable. It's heroic. But Pergrin sees something no one else sees at first. The shell patterns are drifting, sliding sideways, just enough, just a few yards. He whispers, "The smoke. The burning town is throwing off their aim." The flames from Wessel, a town already shattered to rubble, are generating thick, rising columns of black smoke. They bend and twist with the wind, disrupting the German gunners' line of sight. A tiny miracle. A dangerous one, but enough. "Keep pushing," Pergrin roars. "They're losing us in the smoke." The engineers don't cheer. They don't have the breath. They just work faster. And slowly, agonizingly, the first span of the floating bridge begins to form. The pontoons bob and jostle like restless animals, but the structure holds. Metal groans, ropes strain, water slaps against the hulls. But it holds. When the second segment locks into place, Pinder whispers, "We're gonna make it. We're actually going to..." His voice breaks off, because suddenly, through the drifting smoke and flickering fires, he sees movement on the far bank. German movement. Infantry, setting up something long, black, and unmistakable. Not artillery, not mortars. A 20mm flat gun aimed directly at the engineers. And in that instant, every man on the riverbank realizes the truth. Artillery was just the beginning. The real danger is only now arriving. The silhouette on the far bank is unmistakable. Sleek barrel, boxy feed mechanism, angular shield plates. A 20mm flak 38, the kind of rapid-fire cannon designed to chew through low-flying aircraft,
or tear men to pieces at 450 rounds per minute. Sergeant Pender's breath catches. You can almost feel the air tighten around him. The German crew swings the weapon toward the riverbank with chilling precision. No shouting, no hesitation, just cold, mechanical movement, trained, drilled, perfected. Even from across the Rhine, the engineers can sense the shift in the enemy's posture. Not harassment fire, not guesswork. Aimed, deliberate, deadly. Captain Timmerman shouts, "Take cover!" But cover doesn't exist here. Not for engineers. Not on an open riverbank lined with pontoons and floating steel. They dive anyway. Behind crates, behind half-filled sandbags, behind anything that might stop a fragment or two. The flak cannon opens up. The night explodes with a staccato whoomph, 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 each shot slicing luminous tracers across the river. They hammer the water, the shore, the half-built span. Showers of sparks erupt where metal meets metal. The first pontoon quivers under the impacts. The second shudders. The ropes snap taut like panicked tendons. Men scream for medics. Others shout orders no one can hear over the gunfire. The Rhine becomes a glowing battlefield, water churning with white-hot fragments, bullets ricocheting like angry wasps.
And still, the engineers move. Pergrin watches the scene unfold from his observation trench and feels something he rarely admits: fear. Not of dying, but of failing. He grips his radio and barks, "Smoke companies, lay down a screen now! I want a wall thick enough to blind God himself!" Within minutes, mortar teams begin firing round after round of light phosphorus and smoke shells. They detonate along the shoreline, coughing up dense clouds that billow across the water like living ghosts. The flak gun keeps firing, but now the tracers vanish into the fog, spraying blind. The Germans are shooting into a void. For the first time since the cannon opened up, the engineers lift their heads. "Back to work," McMichael shouts, voice hoarse. And impossibly, miraculously, they do. But the damage is already done. As Pender rechecks the first spans, he discovers the truth. Several pontoons have been punctured. Not enough to sink yet, but enough to threaten the entire alignment. "We're taking on water!" he yells. No time, no replacements, no backup plan. Only one option remains. They must repair the damage on the water, under fire, with the current fighting them every inch of the way. McMichael grabs a toolkit and leaps into an assault boat. "Get me across the span," he orders. Two rowers paddle like men possessed, weaving through drifting debris and explosive ripples. The river claws at them, tugging, twisting. Several times the boat nearly flips. "You good back there?" calls one of the rowers. McMichael grins through gritted teeth. "Just get me to the holes before we sink, all right?" The boat slams against the damaged pontoon. McMichael climbs out, boots slipping, hands freezing. He kneels and presses his palm against the cold metal, feels the vibration of the river, the echo of gunfire, the groan of steel under strain. He opens the toolkit and begins applying the emergency sealant patches, thick rubberized mats anchored by clamps and tension wires. It's messy, wet, imprecise work. A flare bursts overhead. The smoke thins. For a heartbeat, the river becomes bright as day. McMichael freezes. On the far bank, the German flak crew has repositioned. They're adjusting for a new angle. A better angle. His angle. "Get down," someone screams from the shoreline. The first shots rip through the air, punching geysers of river water just feet from the pontoon. The current rocks the structure violently. McMichael nearly slips into the Rhine. You can almost feel the terror claw up his spine. The flak cannon keeps firing,
But somehow, by luck or fate or sheer exhaustion, the barrage overshoots, clipping the river further downstream. The smoke obscures the precise target, and the Germans compensate too far. They miss him. Barely. But McMichael doesn't waste the miracle. He slams the last clamp tight, yanks the tension wire, and shouts, "Done! Next pontoon!" Before the boat can pull away, something changes on the shoreline. Something subtle. Something deadly. Colonel Pergrin hears it first. The sound is faint, distant, but unmistakable to a commander who knows German tactics. Engines. Multiple. Tracked. Heavy. He raises his binoculars toward the far bank. Through the shifting smoke, the outline begins to emerge. Dark shapes, low profiles, turret silhouettes. Not infantry. Not flak crews. Armor. German armor. A counterattack forming in the shadows. The bridge is only a few spans long. The engineers are exhausted. The Germans are bringing tanks. And time, precious, fragile time, is running out.
The first rumble is low, felt more through the earth than heard. A deep mechanical growl vibrating through mud, planks, and bones. Every veteran on the riverbank recognizes it instantly. Tanks. German tanks. Colonel Pergrin lowers his binoculars slowly, as if his brain needs extra time to accept what his eyes have just seen. Through the drifting smoke, the silhouettes move with predatory confidence, dark shapes nosing up to the shoreline, turret barrels angled slightly downward. Probably Panzer IVs, maybe even a Panther mixed in. Hard to tell at this distance, harder still through the glare of burning buildings behind them. But one truth is unmissable. If those tanks fire on the engineers, there will be no bridge, no crossing, no advance. Just shattered metal and bodies strewn across the waterline. Pergrin's voice hardens. "Get our tank destroyers ready. Every AT gun you can find. Move." But he knows what they're up against. The engineers don't have armor here. Not yet. The nearest Allied tanks haven't crossed the river because the engineers haven't finished the bridge. A cruel paradox. A deadly one. Pinder, crouched near the pontoon junction, hears the distant rumble and feels his stomach twist. "Sir, they're gonna zero in on us." Timmerman, still soaked from an earlier shell crater, snaps, "Not if we finish first." Pinder almost laughs at the absurdity of it. Finish first? Finish the bridge before tanks can destroy them?
Madness. But there's nothing else to do. The engineers sprint back to the riverbank and begin dragging the next pontoon segment forward. Their boots skid across wet planks, their hands shake, their eyes constantly flick to the far bank where German silhouettes now line up behind cover. Every second feels borrowed. A shell explodes behind them, throwing dirt and smoke skyward. Not artillery, tank fire. The Germans are adjusting their aim. The next shot will be closer. McMichael, exhausted from sealing the damaged pontoons, slams his fist on a crate. "We need cover, something, anything." But there is no cover. Only smoke. Only speed. The next pontoon section hits the water with a heavy splash. The men swarm it like desperate ants, connecting wires, tightening bolts, forcing metal into alignment, despite the river trying to tear their work apart. And then, a flash from the opposite bank. The unmistakable white bloom of a tank muzzle. They hit the dirt. All of them. Instinct. Survival. A fraction of a second later, a deafening crack erupts across the river. For a terrifying heartbeat, no one breathes. Then someone shouts, "It overshot! They overshot!" Another tank fires. Another miss. Then another. A strange, impossible pattern emerges. The tanks aren't hitting the engineers. They're not even hitting the waterline.
The rounds are sailing high, punching holes through the smoke clouds instead of the bridge. Pinder stares in disbelief. They can't see us. The smoke's too thick. Pergrin's orders for more smoke had worked better than anyone dared hope. The combination of American smoke rounds and the burning ruins of Vessel twisted the air into a chaotic curtain the tanks could not reliably penetrate. "Keep the smoke heavy," Pergrin shouts into his radio. "Don't let it clear for even a second."
The mortar crews redouble their efforts. Shell after shell erupts along the bank, casting more smoke into the night, creating a swirling fog wall that turns the entire river into a ghostly battlefield. Hidden, concealed, alive. But the Germans are not giving up. Beyond the smoke, their silhouettes shift again. Infantry squads spreading out, machine gun teams moving to new angles, and the tanks repositioning for a lower trajectory. They're adjusting for elevation, Timmerman warns. They'll find us sooner or later. Pinder fixes another connecting pin, his hands trembling. Then we'd better finish before sooner. The engineers throw themselves into the work with renewed desperation. You can feel the tension in every movement, every wrench turn, every rope pull, every slap of wet boots against wood. The river slams against the pontoons. The smoke stings their eyes. Their muscles burn. Their nerves scream. But they don't stop. A small boot appears. Scouts returning from the far edge of the smoke cloud. The corporal inside yells, "They're bringing something bigger. Looks like another tank. No, 2. The words hit like ice water. 2 more tanks. More guns. More firepower. The Germans are preparing a concentrated strike, a single devastating volley that will obliterate the entire engineering team if even a handful of shots land true. Colonel Pergrin hears the report, looks at his watch, and makes the hardest decision of the night. He turns to the radio man. "Call 1st Army HQ. Tell them this bridge must be passable in the next 3 hours. No delays." The radio man hesitates. "Sir, passable for what?" Pergrin's eyes harden. "For tanks." The engineers around him freeze in shock. "Tanks? Already? Before the bridge is even finished?" But Pergrin isn't done. "And tell them," he adds, "if the 291st fails, the entire crossing operation collapses." The radio man swallows and begins transmitting. As the message goes out into the night, carried by static and courage, the engineers stare at the dark water, aware that the next hours will decide everything. And somewhere beyond the smoke, one of the German tanks revs its engine, preparing for a breakthrough shot. A shot that could end the bridge or the engineers building it.